What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
This is episode 58 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. What kind of command presence, aka executive presence, is needed to lead a high-performing team doing dangerous work? It's probably not what you think. Command presence is often described as having a personality that exudes gravitas, which inspires the confidence of others. We can all imagine the stern executive or gruff military officer who seems to own the room.
And that is one way to go about it. If you combine positional authority with a serious demeanor, you will get a lot of deference, at least for a while. But then things start to go wrong, and the leader loses their temper and hoards decision-making authority. The gravitas will be revealed to be just ego. So instead of thinking command presence as an aspect of personality, I like to think of it as the result of behavior. Some behaviors that lead to good command presence are: be predictable. Just like I manage my boss leading up the chain more than he thinks I do. Sorry, Ed. My team is managing me more than I think they are. They use their influence to vector me to where they need me so that they can accomplish the mission, and that's a good thing. But if they have to figure out what kind of mood I am in before bringing something to me, then it makes it hard for them to manage up, and I have failed. The next one is be calm. I'm high energy and easily excitable. Great for public speaking, but not so good for high pressure operations when it can amp everyone up. During operations, I actually monitor my pulse to keep it as low as possible. And if things are getting hectic, and I know this sounds stupid, I pretend I am bored. Even by just pretending to be calm, it increases actual calmness and brings me closer to neutral. Be trusting. In a team of high performers, I'm rarely the most qualified for most jobs. And even if I was, there's too much going on to control it. So I try to be clear about the extent of others' responsibilities and authority and let them make decisions as much as possible. I trust your judgment is the best thing to say in many circumstances, but then make sure they do what they said they would. Talk less. I spend leadership capital fastest when I'm running my mouth. The picture of a leader coming in, pontificating about the crisis they find themselves in and barking commands that give precise instructions on how to solve it is a complete fiction. Listen first, and then when you do say something, make it clear and concise. The danger of thinking that command presence is derived from personality instead of behavior is twofold. First, it might convince people that they can't learn leadership. Everyone can. Second, it can trick people into thinking that they can just act their way into leadership. Nope. Certainly, some people's personality lends itself to natural command presence, but because this is trainable behavior, I think anyone can acquire these skills. And this is an article written by I don't want to give away too much, but by a law enforcement professional not in the United States of America, but in fact, a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He's a policing professional with experience across the full spectrum of policing operations. His area of interest are the legalities of policing and the application of decisive leadership principles to achieve operational success and sound organizational management. Now, that sounds like a lot, but I'll tell you what this person is. Is there a cop who wants to do right by leading his people because he feels that he has an understanding of what people need. He has an understanding of people and not an understanding of how people should be or what people should do, because everybody's their own individual. However, he has an understanding of leadership and enough of that experience in the police world to go about doing what is right for others. So I would like to introduce you guys to a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of knowing in a couple of sessions that I've been in with some really high profile leaders across the country and actually across the world. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to Kevin Cyr. How are you, sir?
Good, man. Good. Very much. Hey, I hate to correct you. It's pronounced Cyr.
See, I should have asked that first. But see, that's the whole thing is it's Canadian, so it's spelled differently.
It is spelled differently.
It's a different language. No, I'm just
That's right. We won't judge.
But if you look at the name, it says Cyr, and I've said that the whole time, and then when I talk to you, I just call you Kevin, and so then I lose. You don't even think about it. So that's thank you for the correction. I appreciate it.
I could have just let it go.
Helps me be a better person. So how you doing today? Things good?
Hey, man, things are good in Canada here. It's sunny. We're in springtime. We wrapped up some good ops this week and just in for the long weekend.
Yeah.
It's a long weekend here. It's Victoria Day. We, got to celebrate the monarchy.
Oh, okay. All right. See, I had no idea. All I know there's a Boxing Day, right? You have Boxing Day?
Well, that's right. That's right. Yeah, it's all the same, except our Thanksgiving is different, and we've got a few different ones in there.
Do you guys everybody put on gloves and stuff for that, or what is that? Is that a totally different thing?
Wait, you don't know what Boxing Day is? I don't. No, it's the day after Christmas. It's an extra stat holiday. I was today years old when I learned the United States does not have Boxing Day.
No,
it's like when all the good sales are at the stores.
Oh, no. See, the day after Christmas is the day. I don't know if there's sales or maybe after Christmas sales, but it's when everybody goes and spends their gift cards that they get. If you're a kid, you go get the toy you didn't, because your grandma sent you a gift card, but now you go get the toy you didn't get for Christmas or whatever. But we don't have a name for it. It's kind of the 26th.
Yeah, the 26th is like a paid statutory holiday here.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, it is Canada. I don't know a lot about Canada. I just from the jokes everybody makes all the time. But it's like that. I think of you guys as like our cousin that has a different. Their parents have a different set of rules, but we still have the same lifestyle and everything's the same, pretty much same culture.
It's funny. I was down on a course with the California Association of Tactical Officers for a SWAT commander course, and it's exactly like that. It's all these little differences. Like almost everything's the same, but it's just these little differences are they kind of stand out once in a while.
Yeah, is it the differences? Are they like verbal differences, like just the verbiage you use, or is it? What kind of? Give us an example.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, there's those little surface things, but if you were to look at maybe a cultural difference, there's substantial cultural differences, and my joke is, and this is just a joke, is every July 4th of July, I put a thing on my Facebook saying, Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials, and there's far less distrust of government. It's this sense of, well, the government's there to take care of us, and it kind of takes a lot more to rile a Canadian up, with government overreach than in the States. Like some of the stuff that happens here, and people don't even raise an eyebrow, I'm sure would just be there would almost be revolt, and it's to our detriment sometimes, for sure. But it's things like that, we have socialized healthcare. No one really thinks anything of it, and we've got large police agencies. So that's one big difference. Just in policing, is in the States, you've got a bunch of mostly very small agencies. I think something like 75% of agencies have under 25 police officers in them in the States. Yeah, whereas in Canada, there's only 180 agencies. So the United States has something like 18,000 agencies. We only have 180. Well, it's like you guys have 8 times the population. So you would expect, for like 800, we have 18,000. And I think some of that goes to, we almost embrace like a far more centralized governance structure. And then that does bleed into some different cultural aspects. So there certainly is some different cultural things. For example, in California, here's what I learned, is they're talking about SWAT calls that suicidal incident. So, guy's in his house with a gun and he's suicidal. Like, yeah, guys, just pack up and go away. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, we have to go to that call. We're under an obligation to try to, talk that guy down, de-escalate. And in fact, if he kills himself while we're on scene, it's classified as an in custody death. And we get investigated to see if we did enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because we look at it like suicide's not, I guess suicide's a crime to a certain extent, but it's not a crime. And so we want to stop you from doing it. Obviously, we want to keep you from hurting yourself, because the horrible wave that comes along when somebody does kill themselves, that's horrible. I mean, everything of the people that it affects and everything that goes wrong, and where was this missed? How could we be better people in order to help prevent that in the future? But ultimately, it's on you. That's your thing. And if we go there, are we actually, and we look at it like this sometimes, are we exacerbating the issue? If we stay there and we stay out there and we surround the house and we say, hey, Joe, come on out, Joe, come on, we're going to help you out. And are we just amping him up? Are we upsetting him? Or is he going to that's going to fizzle out if we all pack our gear and get going,
Well, that's right. Like, how many suicide calls have cops been to where it's like the guy's in an argument with his ex and he says, I'm just going to kill myself. And he's just talking crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no intention of actually doing it, but we have to treat that seriously.
Yeah.
And now you go to the house and it turns into this big thing. Whereas if you just didn't do anything, it'd be like, it would be nothing.
Right.
But then you contrast that with a guy who's like legit in a mental health crisis. If you're able to get him over that crisis, you will never see him again, because he's going to go about his life. He's going to get the help he needs. And you've saved his life.
Right.
And so, like, how do you tell the difference between those two? I don't know.
Right. And I think there's different levels of mountaintops on this one. So you've got the guy that says that to his spouse or whatever, that, hey, I'm going to go and you're making me crazy. I'm going to kill myself if you keep talking, or whatever, just that little comment. Well, now the basic patrolman is now obligated to go talk to him. Hey, did you say you're going to do this? You send a text to her saying you're going to do this? Come on, man. We can't do that. I'm under obligation now. I've got to take you to the hospital, talk to somebody. But it's almost as if they go to a bigger, they take these bigger steps. They're walking around their house with a rifle in their hand, and they're just screaming, banging their head on the wall. If we bust that door down, are we going to force an issue? And so this is where we if we can control it, we control it. If we can't, we're not gonna. I mean, I think that's how we might look at it,
Yeah, it was a really interesting juxtaposition of I guess of differences in policing. Yeah. So because I'm like, I get investigated if we don't do enough. And they're like, what?
Well, let's get everything here. We're going to need tanks and helicopters and airplanes, and we're going to need Boy Scouts over there, Girl Scouts over there. And we're going to need
and honestly, the primary thing that we've got civilian investigations here. So there's like an agency, a bunch of them are ex-police officers, but they're not cops. They're called an independent investigation office, and they'll come out and investigate the police. The primary thing they're looking for is exactly what you said, is like, well, did the police push up and create a time and space compressed altercation with this guy who's in crisis? And did that precipitate, a use of force encounter?
Right.
Versus, if we pull back and we're negotiating with the guy and he shoots himself, well, there's not much we can do about that. Like, we've done everything we can.
Right.
But, it's like, there was a case in Ontario where the guy they're at a suicidal call. The guy goes quiet for a bit. So they think he's helped self-harm. Well, they breach the door. They go in. He's not self-harm. He's there. He's got a knife, and it's like, and they shoot him. And it's like, well, was that the right thing to do? Hey, man, I got to stop you from stabbing yourself by shooting you. Right?
I've got to kill you so you don't kill yourself.
Yeah. And that's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
But if I can get a negotiator, like a trained negotiator online, and like talk you out of that crisis and just get you to come out of the house and go to the hospital, and then make sure you don't have access to firearms while you're in this mental crisis. We've probably done a thing there.
Right. I think we're similar. I think we're just looking at it. It's that multiple ways to skin a cat sort of deal. And he's got a hostage in there, we're not leaving. If he's his own hostage, and we're beating our head against the wall, what what other option do we have? So we're gonna, okay, well, let's back out and see if we can diffuse this by taking away some of the fuel, and we are some of the fuel sometimes. And so, because we look at ourselves as SWAT teams as, and I would assume it's similar up there, as a use of force just by us activating, by the team activating. We look at SWAT teams as being a use of force, because that's a big thing. You see that the truck pulling up, and you see all these guys hutting out the back door and stuff,
Yeah. See, I wouldn't say we're that far down as classifying as a use of force in and of itself. Like that's not a impediment to deployment of SWAT up here. We can kind of deploy to whatever we want and then scale our tactics accordingly. But yeah, you don't want to make, the mountain out of the molehill kind of thing. Yeah. But I look at it as, I've got a theory. It's called the vitamins and medicine theory. Whereas a lot of cops feel like policing are like vitamins. Like, you can take as many vitamins you want, more vitamins helps. And I know that's like medically not right and your liver will shut down, but just for the sake of the analogy, give me a break. All right.
Right.
So it's like, you can take as many vitamins you want. The more vitamins, i.e. policing, you inject in society, the more healthy that society is going to be. Mm-hmm. And I think to a degree that's true, but we also need to look at it as medicine, and SWAT in particular is medicine, where it's like, you need to apply medicine when you have a specific problem, but it does have consequences. It does have side effects,
right?
And you need to be mindful of that, and you can't just dump medicine unnecessarily at incorrect diseases, and you can't just take them without thinking it through. So
I think almost like a tourniquet. SWAT's like a tourniquet. When worst case scenario, we get them out there. We take care. They take care of the business they got to take care of. Now they may cut off blood circulation, make your hand go cold, and all this different stuff, but there are some side effects of it. But overall, you're going to stop that bleeding, and you're going to probably keep that arm, or you're going to keep that person alive, or you're going to rescue the hostages, or whatever the case may be. The reason you called SWAT, but I would think of it, of in case of emergency break glass, we need this tool now, sort of thing. So, yeah. Who was little Kevin? Where did he grow up? What was his deal as a little kid? What was his thing?
Little Kevin was a disturbed young man who just probably ate too much sugar, drank too much pop, and when was hyperactive. So I grew up on the East Coast in a small town. Well, kind of small. Maybe it's like 15,000 people next to a kind of larger city, like total suburban lifestyle. Middle class, sure. I guess that's like we weren't poor, we weren't rich. We never went on ski trips. We never went to Disneyland kind of thing.
Right,
but
right.
Like we never worried about money. So like just kind of like super average.
Yeah. So you say East Coast Canada.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So just north of Maine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So cold though.
Terrible, man. Terrible. So yeah, be like minus 30, which is like Celsius and Fahrenheit are almost the same at that point. Like just,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant at that point. Winters were just brutal. You'd get, 3 feet of snow in a storm, no problem kind of thing. So I grew up there, and I was just kind of always in fights, like I had this rule, and I don't know how I discovered this, but if someone made fun of me, particularly if they made fun of my ears, I got kind of big ears, they sort of stick out a little bit, we were going to fight. And I don't mean like we were going to fight at lunch, or we weren't going to fight at recess. Like, we're going to fight right now. Like now.
It doesn't matter if you're in church or you're, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And, it actually kind of was sort of an effective strategy, but when I extrapolate where that probably would have got me over the long term, it was nowhere good. Mm-hmm. And then in I think it's probably grade 5 or grade 6. A Karate Kid came out, Ralph Macchio, and I wanted to do karate. So I signed up, got my mom to sign me up to the local karate studio. And so I did all my fighting there from then on, to the point where, it kept me out of trouble. Me and my buddies, man, that's all we did. Like we had keys to the dojo. And so we'd be up there like during doing regular classes 4 nights a week. And then Fridays and Saturdays, that's where we were, is we'd hang the bags and crank some tunes, like crank some Guns N' Roses and just
beat the bags and fight each other. And
we did, 3-on-3 sparring matches,
right. And you go home bruised and sore and limping, but then the next day, as a kid, the next day you're 100% again, because it's so crazy how you can do that at that age.
Yeah. As a 44-year-old now, it's sort of, it's annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I think that, I really credit that with setting me straight. Karate's not the most effective martial art, but that was all there was back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. So I did that and graduated high school. I went to university. So in Canada back there, like university is quite a bit cheaper. We don't call it college; we call it university almost exclusively. There's colleges, but for the most part, you're getting your bachelor's degree at a university.
Uh-huh.
So I started out in a physics program because I kind of like numbers, and then I switched to math, and I graduated with an honors degree in mathematics. I had a couple job offers. One was with an actuarial firm doing like number crunching of stock markets.
Oh, that sounds riveting.
Well,
keep going.
It's lucrative.
I'm sure.
It's lucrative. And then, and I had a scholarship to do my master's of software engineering. This is 2001, so just like imagine like how much that would be worth today. But whatever.
Serious.
I just wanted to drive a police car. Like I wanted to drive a police car with lights and sirens and fight bad guys. Like I wanted to do that since I was a kid.
Right. And so where'd that come from? It was you just see the movies or you just saw them going by and they came to your school and like, oh my gosh, this guy's cool or stuff like that? Or
I remember seeing like as a kid, like, grade 3, a police car driving by, we'd always, wave at the police car and they'd wave back. Uh-huh. And that was like the best thing. And that was it. Like in grade 9, me and my buddies my parents were building a house at the time. We decided we're going to go play airsoft in the house at night in full camouflage clothing that we had because we thought it was cool. And someone called the cops on us. And so
people creeping around in camouflage clothes. Yeah.
With guns, like realistic looking guns and flashlights. Cause we're doing a little CQB practice in this, that's under construction. And so, we got taken down at gunpoint. I thought that was pretty cool,
not in a negative way, but just like, oh, that was, as a kid, I guess that would be death, but
you don't realize the gravity of the circumstance, right? Like those officers, man, they were pissed.
Yeah.
But like, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, code 5 takedown, like
right. That's
thrown out. It was awesome.
And then you go to school the next day. Okay, check this out. I got a story. And that's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it didn't help them. My buddies, before they showed up, they were running through people's backyards and in their combats with their airsoft guns. So that's why they got called. So it was like a legit call. Anyway, but I thought it was awesome, and I just wanted to go be a cop. In particular, I wanted to be on the SWAT team. So I grew up like always thinking like special forces stuff was super cool. But when I graduated high school, it was in the mid '90s. The Canadian military was just in like complete disarray. It was kind of in a position then how policing is now, where it was just derided in the media. The funding wasn't there. It was, their equipment was bad. The Canadian military in particular was coming off of a scandal in Somalia where they killed some kid had crept into camp. He was stealing food and paratrooper, they killed him. I think like tortured him to death or something.
Wow.
Yeah. Well,
looking like our Abu Ghraib debacle that we had.
Very similar. And so I think something happened with the Dutch, very similar. They might be linked to like the melphaquin, like I think that's what's called the anti-malarial pills that they were taking, which just caused like all sorts of strange behavior and stuff. So
weird.
So I mean, that was just front and center of the military. The airborne regiment got disbanded. I had no clue that Canadian military actually has an incredible special forces community because they just kept it completely quiet.
Yeah.
Like no one even knew who JTF2 was. Like it didn't even know existed. Like especially in you can look this up on the internet.
Right.
Now I've come to learn that the Canadian Forces, like SF community is like incredible, like world class.
Right. I didn't even know it. I didn't realize the abilities and of course, like what you're saying that Canada had until I heard a podcast with Jody Mittick. And he's the sniper from, he's probably one of the most popular Canadian special forces sniper guys that's out there. And man, it was just listening to his story. I was like, holy cow, Canada's tougher than I thought. You think of just this friendly, nice, everybody's just, hey, okay, whatever, water off a duck's back type of people. And then you talk and you hear Jody Mittick talk, and you're like, oh, wow, that's a totally different. Okay. Different
Yeah,
candidate than I knew.
they're legit. And if I had known about the opportunities in the armed forces, whether in the SF or not, like I probably would have washed out. Who knows? I would have sure liked to have tried.
Yeah.
But that just wasn't an available option. I didn't have the knowledge because there's no internet. There's no people talking about this stuff. You can't look at it. I go to the recruiter's office, and some guy with Coke bottom glasses, and he's got he's kind of chubby, and I'm like, he just didn't. And he's like got this package. I'm like, no, it just didn't speak to me, right? So
right.
In my mind, the next, the other thing that would be super cool is to be on a SWAT team. So I actually applied to agencies the only agencies that I knew definitely had SWAT teams, because mid 90s, early 2000s, not every agency did, and in the RCMP was one of them. So
yeah, and you think of at least the majority of Americans that I talk to or whatever, they think of Dudley Do Right, or they think of One Calls the Heart or whatever, the guy that's walking around in the bright red coat with the campaign cover, and he's got the boots up to his knees. That's what they think of RCMP. And I've seen since since I've been a police officer, you start speaking with police officers from Canada, or you start doing more whatever research you do, and you're like, no, these guys are they know exactly what they're doing, and as opposed to the joke that they once were, or they portrayed as. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a caricature, right?
Yeah.
And no, the RCMP. So the way the RCMP works is it might bear a little explanation because it's just so different.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, first of all, we're the federal police force. So imagine FBI, DEA, ATF all rolled into one agency, right? And U.S. Marshals, right?
Okay.
One federal police force. So we do all the international drug trafficking stuff. We do, the money laundering, the cryptocurrency. What's the big thing right now is economic sanction evasion, things like that. War crimes. So we always have war crimes investigators overseas. We do a lot of peacekeeping stuff. So we're the federal police agency, like think FBI, right? So we do all that, and DEA, like all that stuff.
Customs and border and everything else.
We don't do customs and border. That we've got our own. There's border services that do that. We do some smuggling stuff kind of in conjunction with, but generally it's like international drug trafficking, but not border control.
Okay.
So we have all that. We also work essentially as like state troopers. So we have policing contracts with some of the provinces to provide their uniformed policing services.
Oh.
And so like in British Columbia, we've got a population, I think like 7 million people or something like that. There's like 8,000 RCMP officers. We're the biggest police force. So like the cities will contract us and the province will contract us. And we still have our federal mandate as well. So in my career, I can go to do like FBI, DEA style work, and then I can go be a patrol cop if I want. And then I can go to the full-time SWAT team. And so for our team, we're really broadly mandated because we're like a city SWAT team. So we do all the the barricades and the hostage rescues and the high risk arrest. We do provincial stuff. So we've got, specialized rope access team that does a lot of, does some rescue work, or we get a lot of protesters up at logging camps and mining camps. So we'll do crazy stuff like, they'll build tripods, and then they'll build a big tripod, like a 30-foot high tripod out of trees, nail spikes through the wood, then bike lock themselves to the top.
Okay.
So now they're precariously balanced, and if you knock it down, you're going to kill them. So we do a lot of that stuff. We've got our helicopter with our hoist and everything like that. And then we also have the federal stuff. So we do, marine armed shipboarding. So if there's a migrant ship coming in with, human trafficking or drug vessel, or, a ferry gets hijacked, we do that as well. If an airplane gets hijacked, we do that as well. So because we're just so broad, it's like anything, man, there's pros and cons to it. Our agency's got a lot of problems, just like every agency. We're a bureaucratic quagmire and just things don't get done. But some things, man, our agency just does really, really well.
That's cool.
Like we've got our undercover program, man, second to none. Do you want a cool story?
Yeah, hit me.
So we can do something here that you guys can't do down there. It's called the Mr. Big operation. Do you know what Mr. Big? You ever hear of this before?
I don't think I have.
So say you get a guy who murders someone, and you kind of just don't have enough evidence to go off of. We have our undercover guys bump into him and recruit him into a fake crime ring and get him to do all these crimes. You guys aren't allowed to do that. I don't know why. I'm not sure.
Well, we call that not framing. Oh gosh, what's the word?
Entrapment.
Yes. Yes.
So maybe, and then they have to have an interview with Mr. Big to get into the crime group. And then there's all sorts of tactics we have to get the guy to cough it up, right? There's actually, it used to be under publication ban for a long time. You can find books on it now. It's really widely discussed in media, which is why I don't mind, talking about it here.
Right. But
like that program, and Australia does it now too, was started in British Columbia by the RCMP, and it's
now,
phenomenal, man.
Do you recruit them and do they go commit a couple crimes before they go meet Mr. Big, or?
Yeah, but they're fake crimes.
So like, hey, let's go rob this old lady over here, but she's also an undercover or something.
Exactly.
Like that, right?
Exactly. And the fake world, it's like the Matrix or Inception. Like, man, like the world that is built up around these people is incredibly compelling, to the point where they're willing to admit their deepest, darkest secrets. Now, double-edged sword, if you're going to be joining this lucrative crime ring, maybe you're willing to lie about doing something you actually didn't do.
Yeah.
Right? I killed that guy.
Yeah, I killed a bunch of people. I'm a murderer like you never would believe. And then all of a sudden, they haven't done anything. They were just trying to get street cred or whatever the case is.
Exactly. So the way you combat that is with your holdback evidence. So if he knows something about the crime scene that no one else knows except the murderer, you're in a pretty good position, right? Or if he can take you to the dead bodies, that's phenomenal. And I tell you, man, I've seen guys arrested on this, and you play the video of them confessing, and you watch them, they're trying to understand, and they think, and this one guy's like, I can't believe you guys were, doing a big project on that big head honcho criminal, and I got caught up in it. Like, what bad timing.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, no, dude, no, that's not a criminal. That's Sergeant so-and-so. And the guy looks good. Well, that guy's crooked, man. Like, you guys got a crooked company. Like, he's a big criminal. Like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, this is all fake,
Yeah.
And there's guys in jail right now who still refuse to believe that those guys were criminals. Just refuse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the advantage of our organizations. We're just so big that we can do, like, we've got like 18,000 cops, right? We can do things.
When you started out, it wasn't go right into, it wasn't, you guys have a patrol function, and then you have to go do patrol first before you can start moving into other things.
Yeah. There's a few people, like if you're like an accountant, they might just grab you and put you in, commercial crime or something. If in money laundering or something, if you have some special skill set. But generally, everyone, all roads lead to patrol right out of your gate, which is good. You got to learn how the street works.
Right. And like I was saying, there's the mindset that Canadians are just friendly. They're nice all the time to everybody. They're easygoing, and the things that get Americans riled up they don't necessarily get Canadians riled up. Obviously you guys have the same amount of crime, because people are people. But you have drugs, and you have rape, and you have sex offenses, and you have theft and murder and everything else. But is it as much as we see down in the States, you think?
I don't think so, and I don't know the stats on it. I can tell you one thing: all the gangsters have guns, regardless of our gun laws.
Okay,
I know that's probably a surprise to you. It's
no,
so shocking.
We have Chicago here, we have New York here.
So all our gangsters have guns. The one thing I can say is that we tend not to see the police being the target of violence as often down there. So you guys have 8 times the population as us. You would expect 8 times the number of police officers killed in the line of duty, right? Like shot and killed in the line of duty. In fact, it's 50 times. So for every 1 officer we get shot and killed, you guys have 50 officers shot and killed.
Wow, that's a huge disparity.
It's a huge disparity. So our criminals all have guns. It's actually rare. So like if we're doing like a warrant service on a drug house or something, the guy's more worried about him getting ripped than it being the police. And they generally won't shoot it out with the cops, because our sentencing laws are so lenient here that they know they're not going to go away for a really long time.
Oh, okay.
The cost benefit ratio just isn't there for them to shoot it out and, down in a blaze of glory kind of thing. Now, that said, we get in shootings regularly because, there's people with mental health psychosis, or there's like dangerous people, or they've made that decision, or whatever reason. But like the gangsters who are like, operating at a higher cognitive level, they generally don't make that choice. In fact, they'll say, oh, good, it's you guys. Because they'll probably get off on some, argument in court, on a technicality. If not, they won't go to jail for long. Even if they go to jail, it's probably not going to interrupt their business that much. Like they'll be fine.
Oh, that's frustrating. Is it frustrating seeing that in 2 years you're dealing with the same guy that you just put away not too long ago or whatever?
Well, I tell you, we just recently had a manhunt with a guy. This guy, some plainclothes officers saw him at a transit station, like a subway station.
Mm-hmm.
They scoped him out. He, of course, burns them right away. He takes off running on the platform. They give chase. He takes his sweater off so they can't really tell. You know what I mean? Like he's changed his appearance a bit.
Right.
When they approach him, he pulls out a pistol and shoots one of the members. I think like a few times. He takes it in the vest and in the hands. He's okay. He's back to work. Manhunt's on. Well, this was like in 2019. I had been involved in arresting him for a murder in 2010. So he killed a guy in a McDonald's bathroom during a big hash deal. I don't even know who even sells hash anymore, but
you rarely ever see a hash.
Yeah. So he killed some, and he got off. He was a manslaughter, so he was on parole. So he kills a guy with a gun. I forget what his sentence was. No more than 9 years later, he's out on parole, strapped, shooting cops. Shot someone else during a robbery. And we ended up arresting him after a 4-day manhunt. And he still had his gun on him. So here's an example. He racked his gun. He was going to fight it out, but we had the drop on him big time, and he chose a different decision. So, and I think his sentence was like 18 years for that one. So for his 2 new shootings.
Yeah.
Like not like you would think, oh, that's life in prison, and it's not.
And he's obviously able to find guns when he gets out. They're not so hidden and so secret. And And now your regular citizens, they're not packing like Americans do. Everybody's strapped. If they don't have it concealed carry, they've got it open carry, and at least that's where it is in a lot of places I go. You see that. Your citizens don't have that, and so what we have is we'll have people that they'll intervene in whatever mass shooting that may or may not take place, and had they not been there, it could have been worse. And I would assume you guys don't have that same or that similar thing, correct?
Well, I'm going to melt your brain, and some of your listeners are going to like flip their table and like turn this off. And I'm going to tell you this: police officers are not allowed to carry off duty here.
Flip my table up. Oh my gosh! Holy cow! No wonder you guys everybody has to know martial arts. Jeez.
That's why everyone has to be nice.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's completely different for that. So like I'm not allowed to carry off duty. Now look, if some criminal like put some threats out specifically against me, I could get authorization to carry off duty, no problem, kind of thing.
Okay.
But the policy is thou shalt not carry off duty.
Like, wow. Now can you have you guys can have rifles whenever you go to the range? You guys have ranges that you're able to go to, take your kid and go learn how to properly hunt and hunter safety courses and
of course. Yeah. No, like I'm not an expert in firearms. Like I'm not a huge gun guy. I get all my gun action at work. We've got no limitations at work. Like at work, we run like a 300 blackout, like with suppressors. We've got, like we're
right. All the SWAT stuff.
We got all the stuff we want.
Yeah.
So that kind of satiates that for me. But yeah, like if you want to like have a shotgun for hunting or a hunting rifle, like no problem. Pistols, no problem. Like that, you have to have a license for it. Like everyone to buy a license or buy or own a gun, regardless of the kind, you need a license because you need to go take your safety course.
Okay.
And they need to run a background check, and then they give you your license, and then you can go to the store and buy one or acquire it.
Right.
They used to have all rifles registered. Like you'd have to register it with the government, but like that got canned when the conservatives got back in power. There's a liberal, I might be misstating it, but I think it was like a liberal policy. So our government is like literally there's a liberal party and a conservative party. And then there's a new Democrat party, which is like super liberal party, right?
Yeah. Seems very similar to something they have here.
It's very similar. So, you get a policy and then it gets reversed. So they used to have a gun registry and now that's no more. And now for like just regular hunting rifles, there's new laws coming down. And frankly, I haven't been paying much attention. Also, I know like, I'm going to say this and you're gonna be like, how can you not pay attention? I'm like, yeah, there's some new law about like, firearms bans, like, AR-15 platforms, like, the quote unquote assault rifle thing.
Right.
I'm just not paying too much attention to it, which I know, again, you guys are like, what? again, that's just a cultural thing where I'm like, eh.
No, my thing is that, I'm with you. I don't pay a lot of attention to that stuff. I hear it or whatever. I have some basic knowledge of it, but until it becomes a law that I have to either follow or enforce, I mean, I'm just like, another thing that they're saying that we may or may not do, and they're going to take away this or they're going to do that. I'll see it when it happens, and then we'll have to deal with it accordingly. And yeah, if I know enough about it and I say, hey, I need to learn about it because I'm going to be voting on this passage, it's worth researching and educating myself. But I'm kind of with you. I just hear about things in the news or whatever. I will listen to it as much as I can, and then move on. I won't let it invade my brain all hours of the day, and then I will make my decision once it comes to something that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's not an election cycle for us right now. It's just talk. So
right,
limited benefit to getting all riled up about things. But
yeah,
it ebbs and flows anyways. Liberals will lose because of inflation. The conservatives will get in. Like whatever, right? And they'll change it, and then the other guys will change it back, and
just always the pendulum's always swinging. So you get out of you go from patrol and you say, I'm going to go right to SWAT, or did you do any of those other special tasks?
Yeah, so I started, my first posting was in a really small town, because that's the other thing, is because we police all these cities, you move, you can transfer around. So I started in a really small, isolated community. There's like 9 police officers that work there. It was the 7 indigenous communities, 2 other small towns. It was, it was a great first posting, because it's like, I'd get this crazy file, like some major assault or aggravated assault or something, and there's no detectives to come take it. It's like,
it's your baby.
It's my baby.
Yeah.
And you don't get that experience in the big cities. Like the detectives are going to come in and do it, and you don't get to learn. So I did that. While I was on there, we have part-time teams in the smaller areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I got on the part-time team. I was really junior, but because no one stays up there for long, because it's a northern community, there's always vacancies on the team.
There's that rotation.
Yeah. So I got on really early in my service to the part-time program, and it's a pretty hard tryout. Like the physical standards are pretty arduous, and then there's a 6-week course. It's now a 9-week course, and it's a national course. Like, everyone from all these different teams are trying out. They try out for their teams. Their team sends them on the course, and so it's a great barometer, because now you're with these other guys from completely different teams. Mm-hmm. And they've got a centralized training staff, and they put on this course. And it was just 6 weeks of, like, back then it was, it was not what we call now an adult learning environment. It was really? Let's see if you can survive environment. Yeah, they used to do horrible things. So it's like, well, it's very typical. We'd be doing our rural training, and we'd be, okay, guys, this is how you set up a rural OP. And then they'd send us out for this OP at 3 p.m., telling us we're only going to be there for 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
And they've run us around all day, so we're all sweaty. We get up there, they leave us there, well into the night. The bugs come out. They don't feed us, like,
right. You're miserable in every sense of the word.
Yeah. And then they start probing your position, and you got to, and then, it's like 1 a.m. when you're out of there. The next day starts at 5. But, what do you know? You've fired blanks, which are super dirty, through every, back then we had MP5s and, and carbines, and it's like, you've shot them all. Now you've got to clean them.
Right. And they're just horrible. Like you said, they're dirty. So it leaves your rifle and your weapon just disgusting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, 6 weeks of that, let's go for, it's plus 30. Well, what would that be? It's like, 100 degrees out. You're in your full kit. Back then it was all blacks. Let's go run some wind sprints on this concrete pad. You
just blazed out. Yeah.
Yeah, just stuff like that, like just super high pressure, live fire CQB, super high pressure stuff, right? So,
and was it on demand? Yeah, and was it like they don't necessarily have a syllabus. They would say, hey, today it's this hot. Okay, let's go run, and it would just, let's try to make it as tough and difficult as possible. Correct?
I think no, it was pretty regimented, because sometimes for these little punishment runs, the transgressions seemed to be a little fictional. It's like, I'm pretty sure, you guys didn't tell us to bring that piece of kit. That's now a really big problem that we didn't bring. So, now
right.
we're going to pay the price. I'm not sure. I think,
Right.
But you don't say anything. You just, Zip
And
it.
so was that your I guess your introduction into it and your acceptance into the SWAT realm?
Yeah, so that gets you your course credit. And now once you have your course credit, you can go, serve on any team, but you still have to get voted on, any team you go to, because some of them had a lot of, different, some of them had different, I guess, qualities, pros and cons. So I was on that team. And then I transferred to another city, started doing drug work, criminal intel on biker gangs. I was doing major crime stuff, which was interesting. I was too busy to be on the team at that point. Went out for the team, was with them for a bit, and I got. I don't mind saying this because I'm back. I've been back full time for years, but I got in trouble and got put in the penalty box for a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was good. It was a good example of what Jocko talks about, the indirect approach and what happens when you don't take it.
Right.
So I'd gone down to this team. Now this is you think this is early 2000s. The SWAT program is not what it is today. Like if I teleported myself from then to today and showed what we have now, I'm pretty sure my little brain would have exploded, right? My 25-year-old brain would have just come out of my ears.
Right.
Back then, it was very much like, we're rocking MP5s. We're in all black. We don't have tourniquets. We don't have first aid kits. We're doing these crazy tactics that we would look at today and just be like, wait, that's nuts. No NVGs, just very rudimentary stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was at a practice one day, and this is an example of the culture of that second team that I was with. And at the end of the day, we do CQB practice training for the day, and the instructor or the two I see the team says, "Okay, guys, is there anything else we need to train today?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we need to do. Can you show me a man down drill? I'm a new guy. I don't know what to do if my partner gets shot." He looks at me just ice glaze and says, "That's a loser attitude. We're ERT. We don't go down." And so I'm like,
okay,
what?
Tell that to my wife, who's expecting me to come home, and she's relying on you guys to make sure I get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, would combat or try to combat that attitude by coming at it very head on. And guess how that worked out for me?
Yeah, that's that penalty box you're talking about.
yeah. The old school guys didn't like that too much.
Right.
But I always knew, in the back of my mind, I didn't know what the program should be, but I knew what it shouldn't be. And I knew that what I was looking at wasn't where it could be. I still thought it was awesome and cool. And you know what I mean? It seemed cool before I got in, but then when I got in, I'm like, oh, there's not as much to this as I thought. It's not as regimented as I thought. And it's not as complex, or, it's not as,
more challenging, more of a challenge, right?
Yeah, it was plenty challenging. There's no question there, but yeah, it just wasn't a very sophisticated program. You couldn't sit there and tell me, if I asked, "Hey, what's the difference in our tactics from when we're dealing with a hostage taking of a guy at a bank who got his escape interrupted and he wants $1 million in a helicopter on a roof, compared to how we deal with a hostage taking when it's a guy with his ex-wife who's already killed the new boyfriend?"
Right.
They're both hostage taking. What's the difference there? They wouldn't be able to tell me because they didn't or maybe someone would, but it certainly wasn't taught.
There wasn't a general, okay, here's what we would do. It's let me think about that. I don't think there's much. And
exactly. What do you mean? They're hostage calls. No, those are totally different.
Right.
So, when I got in the penalty box, I went back to the team, kind of after I realized, and I grew up a bit too, because I was a bit of a jerk, so, it's just
it's that kid that was ready to get into a fight.
It's
at a moment's notice.
Same guy. Yeah. My personality was about the same as me poking my finger in your chest every chance I got, kind of thing. Right.
Okay.
And what was the saying I've heard? There's no wrong way to be right. There's a wrong way to be right.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
There's definitely a wrong way to be right. So I went back to that team, but then I got a promo and I got transferred because I was applying to some major crime work. Mm-hmm. So I came down to the big city here, so just outside of Vancouver, and did major crime work. But man, every day I would walk by the SWAT locker and I'd kind of look at the armored vehicles, and I could see the program those guys were running because they were a full-time team then. And their sophistication level was substantially improved. And sort of one of the watersheds was that it became full-time in 2006. In 2010, we had the Olympics. So the team started doing all kinds of training with our SF community. and as well as like starting reaching out with other agencies, and it just totally elevated our game. And that's one of our major, I guess, recipes for success now is, don't look inwards for growth. Like there is growth inwards, but you got to go out and rub shoulders with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And like we could go down to like, you could pick the quote unquote worst, SWAT team in North America, just backwards tactics and terrible equipment. I guarantee you'd spend a few days with them, you'd see something that they're doing that's super smart that you didn't think of.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're good. Like they're going to be squared away in something.
But I think it boils down to, like you were saying, when you went down to California, you were talking with those other guys, that there's similarities, but there's differences, and it's cultural because they're dealing with a specific kind of person or set of people. And that's what like you said, these little groups, these little teams are going to see, okay, we do it this way because this is actually what will make a difference or get people to respond to us because of XYZ. And you're like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. But then again, we think of it this way because this is the sort of thing that people that we live around are used to. It's just a different, I think, cultural, and I think you have your cultural issues that you see in each, maybe neighborhood or each group that you work with or city, or, as you call them territories, we call them states, that whole thing. We're just, everybody's different. So you're going to have a totally different thing for the people up in Seattle than you are in the people that are down in, I don't know, let's go with Houston, Dallas. It's a totally different thing.
Well, that's it. And I think you've hit the nail on the head, where the key is to, when you're comparing yourself to others, is not think of terms of better or worse, but rather just different.
Right.
Now, look, are there some teams out there who do some stupid things? Yes, there are. And there are things I don't want to emulate, but I guarantee that team has handled a call that I've never seen in my career. And I can learn from that call. Or that team has, they've got some weird challenge because like the boss wouldn't buy them equipment, piece X of equipment. So they had to do something else instead. And we could be like, oh man, that would work perfect.
Yes.
So who's better or worse? Like you can't, there's no scale like that. And I think if you, like we're a pretty big team. We're like 63 on paper. We don't actually always have that. But we're a big team. We do over 200 calls a year. That doesn't make us better. It makes us busier. But there's types of calls that we don't get to do because we're in the city for the most part. Right.
And, I guess it boils down, there's a million variables too. And I think there would just be so many that we can't say, okay, it was because of this. I mean, the team can have more short people or more tall people or more, muscular people, or they can have whatever. And each person, we have to adjust because of how these people actually physically are, or the terrain in which we live in, or the weather and the climate that we have, or whatever the case is. You take the team that's maybe say down in Las Vegas compared to your team, they're going to know how to deal with hot weather a lot better than you're going to be able to deal with. But then again, you can deal with cold weather a lot better.
No, this is Vancouver. It doesn't get cold here.
Okay, never mind. Okay, let's go back over. Let's go to Toronto or Calgary or something.
Well, that's right. Well, listen, we always do a winter survival training up in Northwest Territories, where it's, we're outside in canvas tents for 4 days. Mm-hmm. It gets to minus 40, which is the same Fahrenheit. Like that's where Fahrenheit and Celsius is the same. Like minus 40. Actually, no, it was minus 52 at the coldest with wind chill. Dude, like your optics won't work. You breathe near your optic, it's going to fog up. Your batteries are going to die instantly. Jeez. If you lube your gun, it's going to freeze. Like there's things you can't, if you don't resolve that call in an hour, you can't stay outside. Like it's minus 50. Like,
yeah. And that's horrible. And you take those guys that are in 100, Phoenix or Las Vegas or whatever, 120 degrees or something like that. They're there and they're going to finish that call. They're going to finish that. And we're getting really hot. Well, we're going to swap you out. Go get some water, go get some air conditioning, and then get back to it,
Yeah, we get a day like 90, 100 degrees. And if you're on a containment point, next to the Bearcat, with the engine running, blah, 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 and this is the heat kicking off that.
Yeah.
You're going to wilt, yeah. So everyone's got these different challenges. So that's we don't think in terms of worse or better. We love to interact with other teams and we'll steal ideas from anybody.
So you've been on for how long?
Like overall policing, like 22 years now. 21.
Well, how about the team? How long have you been on your team?
So this team, I did 5 years full-time. So when I did major crime, just wanted to go back to SWAT, managed to lateral over as a corporal, worked in the training det and promoted to sergeant there. So I was there for 5 years. And then I left to take my commission. So become a commissioned officer. So we call it commission, like white shirt, like a lieutenant.
Oh, okay.
We call it inspector, be like lieutenant in most agencies.
Oh, okay.
So I went and did like policy jobs, which were actually interesting, like not super fun, but very useful.
Right.
And then the commander of the team job came open, and because I had the experience, I was able to get it. So I've been back now for 2 years as the commander of the team.
Okay, and is that's your full-time gig?
That is my full-time gig. Yeah,
wearing camouflage and kitting up every other day, maybe.
I wish I could say that. Like, okay. Listen, we got a big unit. I was out at a CQB day on this week, and that was a pretty, like, those are treat days for me.
Yeah.
And when we go on calls, I'm not a guy on a containment point, or I'm not in the entry team. Like, I'm commanding the call. So we run it very differently here, where we call it a critical incident commander.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have my team leader, my ERT team leader, my SWAT team leader, and my negotiator lead. And we call it the command triangle. And so and I'm the one making the decisions ultimately. So if the negotiator's like, hey, we want to continue negotiating with this guy, and the TAC guy's like, listen, that's putting our guys at risk. We're exposed right now. We need to knock those cameras out. And negotiators, well, knocking the cameras out is going to amp that up. It's going to, erode my ability to de-escalate this verbally. I'm the guy who's got to make that decision of, if we're going to do A or B.
Right.
So I guess my job is to limit 3 domains of risk, I call it. One is physical risk. So I need to make sure that the ERT team leader has the resources they need at scene to mitigate risk to themselves and to the community, right? The next is investigational risk. So at the end of the day, we want to charge. So if we do something that breaches the constitutional rights of this guy and we get our charge tossed out, no one's going to call us because they don't want us to interfere with their charge.
Right.
Or if we fail to secure the evidence because we weren't paying attention or destroyed it by accident, no charge. And the other is organizational risk. So if I do something stupid, like, we're at a barricade call and criminal barricade, and I order my guys to, do a dynamic entry to get the guy because we got bored after 20 minutes, instead of gassing up, well, we're going to get sued for that, right?
Right.
So how can I mitigate organizational risk? So we don't want to look stupid in the media. That's like a distant third. We don't want to get sued. If my guys use force, I need to make sure that they're protected legally. So were they lawfully placed? Is our risk, have we gained the right intelligence that I can pass to them so they can make defendable use of force decisions?
Right.
Like that,
right.
That's my job is to coordinate all that stuff and give them top cover on things.
Right. And so more or less you get to kind of sit back in the command center, just taking in all this information and trying to make the best decision out of everything that everybody gives you.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know what? I think a better way to say it than I'm making all the decisions is typically I'm deciding who makes the decisions, right?
Okay.
So for example, I try to enable the TAC team leader to do as much as he can without having to come ask me first. Now, look, when who should make the decision is the person who has the most information to make that decision and who has who can enact the decision in the appropriate amount of time. And here's what I mean. It's like, let's say we're going to go do a search warrant, right? So there's no negotiation piece. We're just going to go do a search warrant, like it's a drug warrant or the guy's got guns or something. The way we used to run it, and this when I was coming up in the teams, is like, we go surround the house and let's say there's a surveillance camera outside. We want to knock it down because, the guy's watching us in his cameras. He's exploiting our position.
Right.
We would have to radio back to the commander. Hey, can we knock out this camera? Well, the commander's like maybe in the command post, which is probably for that, just his truck, like a block away. He can't see the camera. He can't see the teams. He can't see where we are. Why is he the guy making the decision? Like, what information does he have to make that decision? He doesn't.
Right.
So why is he the one making it? Because he didn't talk to the team leader beforehand to deconflict what decisions that TL can make.
Right.
So when
boiling it down to once again, I messed up my D words again. Not de-escalation.
Decentralized command.
Decentralized command.
Yeah.
See, but that's exactly it. Is you've trained them. You know that they're trained properly. they go do your job, and if when you face an obstacle that you're having a hard time navigating, that's when I can come in and I can help you guys out. But I trust you guys to do your job, more or less, correct?
Well, that's right. So when we brief the plan beforehand, they'll bring, hey boss, here's what we want to do. It's a search warrant. Here's the residence. We're going to go contain it. We're going to do, we want to do a breach with the Bearcat arm. And then we want to do call outs, and if that doesn't, and I'll say, great. And we'll pre-authorize these things. And I'll say, hey, great guys, if you come across any cameras, go ahead and knock them out. If you need to breach the door or like a secondary door, if it's giving you problems, go ahead. But then I'll give a limit. Like, listen, if it becomes protracted and they're not coming out, we're going to go to barricade protocols, which is something different. And those barricade progressions will, be back on command authority. So you have to ask me for that, because we're going to start looping in the negotiator. Because one thing that we have to be careful of is if we've exercised decentralized command and let that team leader start taking tactical options, and there's like the negotiators are doing negotiator options, they can start working at cross purposes.
Right.
So it's like all of a sudden negotiators online going, hey, SWAT just broke the windows and it amped this guy up. I didn't know they were going to break the windows. If you'd have told me that, I could have prepped him for it, or distracted him, or been ready.
Now he's amping up, and he's loading his rifle, and he's getting ready to do whatever. Yeah.
Now he's amped up. Exactly. So it's like, it's a balance point. So how much decentralized command can I give that team leader, and how much decentralized command can I give the negotiator lead? But I still have to watch to make sure they don't work at cross purposes.
Yeah.
And I tell you, like Jocko, one of the EA extreme ownership sessions around me, gives the example of like, give decentralized command, but be careful of that blue on blue. So in a purely tactical setting, it's like, you've got one element maneuvering, another element maneuvering. All of a sudden, oops, blue on blue scenario, right? They're in each other's arcs. Well, we can take a step back and apply that to really anything where I've got two different groups, negotiators and SWAT, now working on at cross purposes. It's a blue on blue, not in arcs of fire, but in responsibility of what they're trying to accomplish.
Right. And for anybody listening that you're not familiar with what blue on blue is, it's basically friendly fire. It's the idea of, in this case, we're talking about if we were to if there would be two police officers are on either side of this building, and they come around the corner and they don't realize the other one's there, and they just know that if you see anybody, you're supposed to shoot them, and they come around and all of a sudden they shoot each other. Worst case scenario, right? The other side of it is what Kevin, you're talking about is one team is trying to do something and the other team is trying to do something, and they're pushing against each other, and it's not working because they're not working together. And so that it just defeats everything that's trying to be done in the general sense. So I just want to make sure everybody is familiar with what blue on blue means. It's basically friendly fire, or just getting in your own way, stepping on your own feet.
Yeah, and oftentimes you don't even realize you're doing. You're just like, why aren't our negotiations going any? Well, right. Your tech guys are breaking windows without,
Right.
Yeah. So
what are some of the things that you get to, I guess, face on your daily, in that you are challenging yourself in as far as whether it's leadership stuff or whether it's the job in general? What are some of the things that you're seeing that you're like this has the potential to make me a way better person if I can grasp this, if I can do this right?
I think probably the last, I'm going to say it's been maybe a little over a year, has been just focusing on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably assumed that I was just going to naturally get into this, leadership position of all these, high performing guys, and it's going to be easy because they're all hard workers and they're high performing, and therefore leading that team is easy.
Mm.
And it's not. It's hard in a different way. Like, we don't have any performance issues. Like, I never have to kick someone in the butt and get them to do work. It's always, something else, right? Like, high performers have high expectations. They've got, they want things done a certain way. They're opinionated about things, and that's good, but you have to learn to manage that. And, when I came to the team, I fell victim to the to the new sheriff in town mentality, without having the soft skills. And it's funny, I actually resisted, like viscerally resisted the idea of soft skills. I thought they were a bunch of BS. Like, like there's no wrong way to be right.
Right.
Kind of thing. And if the policy decision, or if the, I'm going to change the schedule, our schedule's junk, so we're going to go to this new schedule, and the new schedule is way better. Therefore, everyone's going to immediately understand it's better, and I don't have to sell it. I just have to, post it. Like, I'll just put it on a text group, and they'll just, realize how brilliant it is, and probably fawn over my amazing leadership. And it's like it just doesn't happen, right? Like that's right. It just doesn't happen. Or you can find like teams are super high performing, but every team has gaps and weaknesses. So if you think you can point out a gap or weakness that everyone will agree is a weakness, hey guys, here's a weakness, fix it. If you think you can do that and everyone's just going to jump and fix it, it's not. That's not
another thing coming. Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to happen, right? And then if you keep trying to do that over time, you're just going to burn all your leadership capital like completely, and then then you're in for a rough haul.
Yeah, because you're sitting there. If you sit there and say, "Hey, we've been doing this wrong this way, and I want to start doing it this way," the guy who came up with that way to do it, he could be like, "Well, we've been doing it this way. I worked it out as it was this, and it helped out this way." And nope, it's terrible. I don't want to do it. But you missed the point where he said this. I came up with this idea this way. So now you're talking about him. Now you're saying, hey, you do things wrong. You do. I don't like you the way you did whatever. How you came up with this. We're going to do it my way. All of a sudden, you're totally negating everything he has to say, and he's just frustrated, and he has no desire to do anything better, because now he's at that point where like, hey, no matter what I say, I guess I'm told I'm stupid, or what I know is worthless. And that's the thing that you're trying to avoid with those soft skills, correct?
Yeah. Well, that's it. Exactly. And I'll give you an example of a really bad habit that our team had. And it was this way when I was on the team. And it was still this way when I got back to the team as the team commander. So we had this thing where so you got to think like, bunch of SWAT guys. We have an 80% attrition rate on our selection process. We get to pick exactly who we want, and it's really, really hard to get in, and it's hard to stay in, and they're busy and they get to do cool stuff, right?
Right.
We started having this thing where, and it's an easy shortcut until it's not. Is as an NCO, the easiest way for me to get my subordinates on board with me and build leadership capital was by denigrating the decisions of my higher ups. So some decision came down of, hey, guys, when you do your overtime claims, can you include the file number and this timing on it, right? Like something totally innocuous.
Right.
It's like, I can take that. And what we used to do, and we all did it, and it started right from the inspector down, is like the district commander now wants us to, explain our overtime budget more. Guys, they're always in our business and this and that, it's like, it's us against them.
Right. Right.
And that works great. Cause great. Now I'm us with my, we're us and they're them.
Right.
What have I taught my sergeants to do? When I ask them for something they don't want, now they're going to do that same thing to me.
There's this guy, he's always harping on us about this or that. He wants this. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah. You start getting, you start getting that, that default defensive position, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's, us against them, and them is whoever wants us to do something different. It took a lot of work. We've undertaken two major leadership, three major endeavors. One, we did a big survey, kind of like an anonymous survey. I'm not convinced of the value of that. Some of the questions can be interpreted in such different ways that I'm not sure the quality of the answer, but you get some good feedback. Mm-hmm. Then we got he was actually one of the head guys for in the Canadian Forces, Special Forces, the Tier 1 unit over there. Mm-hmm. I want to say major there, high rank. He was in charge of all guys. He came by, as well as another senior officer there, met with all our team, met with me, hey, and this was very early on in my tenure there, because there were some friction points we had to address, and super helpful in identifying some problems that I had as a leader, like some gaps. Uh-huh. And I realized, holy crap, I can't just will and learn to do this on my own. I need some help learning this. So he set me on the right track. And then I signed up for the Extreme Ownership Academy, which has been completely transformational in how I handle leadership, to the point where it's like, initially I felt like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu white belt. You come in, I was rolling with a guy last night. It's like his 5th class, everything's strength, right? He's like, oh, and he's a strong guy.
Tense and
oh yeah. And he's like, man, this is a great workout. And yeah, it's because you're going to like 80% too hard, bro.
Because today, right now, how's he feeling?
Oh, exactly.
You talk to him like, oh my gosh, I can't move. I'm sore, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So it's the same with leadership. It's like, if you rely on strength, aka positional authority, and just, pushing things through because they're the right thing, you're just going to burn yourself out,
Right.
And that's where I was. I was like, well, I actually need to learn some skills and some techniques if I'm going to survive this. Because my first few months, I was like, I don't know how long I want to be here. It's my dream job. And it kind of sucks because it's just, it's constant friction.
Right.
And
there's that idea that when you are trying to do something and the harder you push against it, the more you're going to get pushed back, but when let's take, for instance, my wife was really upset. She had a horrible day at work. She came home, the dogs had gotten into some stuff, and she was just frustrated, found a scratch ding on inside of her car. Same time, everything is just, she's mad about everything. And, we have this inside joke, and I had made a comment about this inside joke that we have, and it totally just deflated her frustration, her anger. She starts laughing, and she brought something else back up. And it was from that point on, she was good for the rest of the evening. And she goes, you just flanked me, didn't you? You just came in and flanked me on that one. Because she knows, and those of you guys that are listening, we keep talking about Jocko. We're talking about Jocko Willink. We're talking about he's got a program that both Kevin and I are on. It's leadership training, and it's things that anybody you sign up for. You go through these things. You can get on live sessions with Jocko, Kevin, myself. And to be honest with you, Kevin and I aren't running it. Jocko's running it because you don't want us trying to run something like that. But nevertheless, there's different laws of combat, and there's different lessons that are learned. One of those is flanking, and flanking is coming around something and dealing with it in a different angle, in a way that is going to deflate the issue, as opposed to just hitting that wall just over and over and over, and you bang your head against it. Why not just go through the door that's right next to it? Turn the handle, go easy through that door. Like you said about the guy that's going 80-90%, trying to muscle everything around, and you're like, you're killing yourself. You're hurt. You're making it more difficult just with your tension and your struggle. So just slow it down a little bit, ease back, and it'll be easier to go through.
Well, let's see. So you talk about flanking. I'll tell you my go-to move for flanking, and I was thinking. So one of Jocko's things is about asking earnest questions. So if you run across a problem, ask an earnest question about it. Don't assume you know what the problem is. Ask an earnest question about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought about that, how I could apply that in my work, and I realized that I was asking questions in the wrong way. So let's say you're going to plan a search warrant execution, right?
Right.
So we want to arrest this guy. He's wanted on warrants, and we think he's got guns and drugs in his house or something like that. You're going to bring me with your operational plan. You're going to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want to, surround the house and do calls, blah, 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 ABC. If I start asking what I call what about questions, I'm going to be like, well, Ken, what about doing surveillance and arresting him, when he stops at the 7-Eleven?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ken, what about, doing this instead? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? All of a sudden you start feeling defensive, right? And It creates this thing where every time you bring me something, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to poke holes in it, right?
Yep.
What that built over time in our team was a desire or like a necessity to hide things from the boss. So it's like, if I know the boss is going to poke holes in everything that he sees, I'm just going to make sure he doesn't see everything. And so I might show him, 20% of this plan, the other 80%, I'm just not going to tell him about. just to protect myself and protect the team, and
show him what he wants, or tell him what he wants to hear.
Exactly. I'm not going to give him ammunition to come at me. So you're creating a defensive position. I changed that now so instead of asking questions, what about, I ask questions with tell me about. So I'll say, could you tell me about, Ken, could you tell me about the other options you thought of that you rejected and why you chose this one? And you're going to go through and you're going to say, well, I thought of a surveil and takeaway, and we decided not to do that because A, B, C, and D. We thought of this. We decided not to do that because of that. And I'm going to, first of all, now you're not defending what you said, you're demonstrating your thought processes.
Right. And I think it also shows the ability for me to sit there and say, if I'm the person you're talking to, to say, what else do you think about? Well, I thought about this, and this. It shows that I thought I gave proper thought to everything, and not just this one way. And I came up this one way with this only way we're going to do it. I opened my mind. I stepped back and I said, hey, I looked at all these other things to show you that I'm smarter than I might look, or I'm not a dummy, and I know exactly what you're going to ask. And because that's why we're on the same team, is you trust me to look at these big other options, these big pictures and whatnot.
Well, that's it. So yeah, I'll 99% of the time, let's say 98% of the time, I'm going to walk away from that interaction going, man, Ken is a pro at this stuff. Like he's been on the team 10, 15 years. He's done hundreds of these things.
Yeah,
man, I would have asked what about questions to maybe 2 other options. Ken actually considered 5 other options. But if I ask what about questions, we might only look at 2, but you might have looked at 5. So we're going to build that trust between us. Mm-hmm. So that's 98% of the time. 1% of the time, while I'm asking you questions like, hey, could you tell me about this? You're going to realize, oh, I forgot whatever this thing. So now instead, if I'd asked you what about questions, it would have been pointing out your error. But now you self-discovered your error. So I don't have to expend any leadership capital at all. The error gets discovered. Mm-hmm. You've got buy-in. You're going to go fix the error because you've discovered the error instead of me pointing it out to you. So now you're not defending the fact that it's not an error. It's not a mistake. You didn't forget it. And then maybe 1% of the time, you actually did leave something out. Because I've been around a little bit too. Maybe I see something you don't, or I just think of something you don't because no one's perfect. Okay, Ken, well, and I can just do a little escalation of counseling, and maybe after the telebooks, I'm like, well, have you thought of this thing? And I can more gently probe into a direction that might be unexplored. But I don't want to do that in the 98% of the time because it's useless. Mm-hmm. I'll just save it for the time I actually need it. So yeah, that's one of the ways we build that trust relationship. Now, when we get on a file where we don't have time to have that conversation, right? We've got a compressed time span. Mm-hmm. I know it's all going through your head, and now I'm not going to be in your business. I'm not going to be slowing things down with stupid questions because we've already had these conversations. Right.
And it's easy for me to, as we're going through those positions, I know now that and it's because it's a give and take, that that I'm already thinking of the next step and what we're going to do next and how we're going to deal with this next thing. And if I were to say, hey, we're going to do X, Y, Z, you may be like, good, perfect. I was hoping we would get to that next, or I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you. Good job. That's why you're in the position you're in, or whatever the case is. And if we're talking high problematic issues such as SWAT calls or actually gunfights or whatever. But this could be something that's as easy as we need a different paper supplier for the printer, basic business stuff that could be down to the lowest level or the highest worst case scenario.
Well, yeah. That's exactly it.
So, so you're going through all this different stuff, and you've been, I guess, your SWAT commander for how long now?
I've been the commander for 2 years there now.
For 2 years, and do you see big changes that you want to make, or you're like, I like where it's going. We're making little incremental changes as we go, and this is the way that I would like to see it go, or are you happy with where it's at?
So operationally, I'm super happy where the team is at. We've got some budget pressures right now. The cost of fuel is just killing us.
Yeah.
We've got to buy new body worn cameras. There's always some new thing. So I've got big budget worries that kind of keep me up at night. But as far as big changes, I never make big, I love big changes. I never make big changes. Like they're so enticing because I'll build this big picture in my head about, and I'll just say this because, my guys will probably find this podcast, even though I won't tell them about it. They'll find it somehow. And I don't want to say anything. Oh, you said we're going to change our schedule, but let's say we're going to change our schedule. We're going to change our deployment pattern. We're going to change our uniforms from green to pink, right? Like
the most off the wall stuff. You think,
yeah. Like guys, we're going to change our uniforms from green to pink. And here's all the reasons why, right? That's a big change. I will build in my head a very coherent narrative as to why that'll be successful, right? Mm-hmm. And it'll project like 12 steps and 5 years down the line on why this is going to be successful. And I'll be very confident in that. I have zero confidence in my confidence. There's some really interesting research out there by this guy named Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize winning economist, behavioral economist. Mm-hmm. And he's like, listen, confidence is not a predictor of how likely the outcome is. It is merely a description of how coherent the narrative in your head is of you getting from A, B, C, D, all the way to where you think you want to go. If you can string together a coherent narrative, you will be confident, regardless of how probable that outcome actually is, right? So I apply this on calls all the time. It's like, we'll spin stories like, oh, if we, breach the door and gas the bedroom, if we just put a little gas in, that'll convince him to come out. Right. But you don't know that. It might just make him mad. It might just, tip your hand, or it might make him come out. Uh-huh. I can feel confident if I can string a good narrative together, a nice, compelling story.
Right.
The confidence is just a feeling, right? I don't make command decisions based on feelings of happiness or anger or frustration. Mm-hmm. Why should I make decisions based on the feeling of confidence? So big changes require confidence. That's just a feeling. So I much rather, I would love to like, guys, let's just tear this thing down and, fresh sheet of paper. How would we design this today? And I think that's important to do sometimes, because sometimes like, that daily report that you've been filling out forever is no longer relevant and you should stop doing it. Right.
Right.
So sometimes circumstances have changed and it's time to adapt to it. So I'd never say be locked, but big changes, man, they're really hard to sell. They're really hard to implement. In our position, like let's say I wanted to, hey guys, we're going to change our schedule. Okay. Now I have to change our training program. Not only that, I have to change how our vehicles are deployed. Not only that, I have to worry about, office occupancy, because under labor code, I can only have X number of guys in the office for bathroom facilities. Believe it or not, like that's actually a limit. Like wow. There's so many variables. It's like a domino game. I can't just knock one over and think it's going to, branch out in unpredictable.
Right. Is it going to now mess with something else because you didn't think about, and now is overtime going to be an issue? You're going to have to think of something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. And so one of my big things is I focus on being effective, not efficient. My program is not efficient. Sorry, it's just not.
Right.
But it is effective. We have a very low tolerance for failure. Like we want to be a zero fail organization. And the example I give when sometimes when my bosses ask me about how much money I spend, my budget's about 15 million, by the way, if you're curious.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's awful. Most of that's salaries and stuff. But it's like, if you go to a pharmacist, do you want a pharmacist that's just super fast and efficient? Or do you want a pharmacist who's not going to give you the wrong medicine and kill you?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Like, you get to pick. You can't have both.
So you're basing it off of the why. Then your why are you? Well, here's this issue. Why are we going to do this? We need to do this because of X, Y, Z. And so that even boils down to your whole reasoning that you're doing everything you're doing is go back to your why. And like you said, if you could blank slate it and go back, okay, we're going to do this. Well, we want to do this. Well, why? We're going to change from green to pink. Why? If you can answer your why questions all the time, you can. And if you ask that all the time, I mean, it's like a little kid. But why are you doing that? Well, because I'm doing this. Well, why? Well, because I'm doing this. Well, why? If you can continually ask yourself why, you'll know your why. Then you'll know that'll give you your confidence. Because if you know that I am doing this for the right reason, because it needs to be done, we're going to boot this door because we're going to save that baby inside that room. Your confidence is now, I know what I need to do. And there's no question about it. Your why has been answered, and that'll help you in the long run. Correct?
Well, yeah, exactly. So Now, sometimes, and I don't know the answer to this, but sometimes I find people will keep asking why simply because they don't agree, right?
Uh-huh.
And as a leader, it's okay if I want to say, listen, guys, we're switching from pink to green because I feel that, this is within my purview to decide this, that public perception is more important than your safety. You know what I mean? Like you could agree or disagree with that, but the why is very clear. I am prioritizing factor A over factor B.
Right.
And you can disagree, but that doesn't mean we don't understand the why. It's just you don't agree with the why.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you'd never do that. That's a ridiculous example.
Exactly. But you're right. And there are people that, unfortunately, do that sort of thing. Not you and not anybody that I know, but you hear about stuff, whether it's in the newspaper, on social media, or whatever, where people just say, oh, they're doing this and they're taking this away and they're no longer allowed to. They were saying back when we were having those big riots down here in America 2 years ago, police aren't allowed to use tear gas anymore on riot crowds. That was the thing that was dispersing them and breaking it up. Yeah, but it hurt their feelings. Come on now. We got to figure out what's going to be effective and what's going to be the best use, because ultimately we are responsible for what people put us in the positions of, whether it's, our bosses or whatever the case is. We're put in those positions because they trust us to make the right decisions. If we don't, then we're going to mess it up. So then we have to figure out what's the why. Why do I continue to do this? Because I know it's right. What's right. I got to figure out, based off my integrity, to do things the right way and efficient.
So I think, just like sometimes I get frustrated when if I explain, hey guys, we're going to do A over B because I think A is more important than B. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes people will disagree and kind of just want to keep doing B anyway.
Yeah.
I think police officers, we tend to do that with society. So if the elected officials say, listen, we don't want you guys using tear gas on riots anymore. Mm-hmm. I think it's on us to explain, okay, here's the actual implications of that policy decision. Right. Here's what's going to cost you. Like, we will have no means of intervention on these. Like we don't have enough manpower to go, we're not going to club people, to
right.
do this. So for breaking windows. So we're not going to do that. We don't have the manpower to arrest everyone. Like, we're going to have to riots will run their course, and there's going to be, whatever property damage results of that. Mm-hmm. Are you okay with that? So that's their A and B. And these elected officials can say, yes, we think A is more important than B. We're willing to make that trade-off. As police officers, I heard some guy say it, and I can't remember who it was because I asked him if I could steal it. It's like if we hire a painter to paint our house and we say, listen, we only want the frontage painted. And he says, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's going to look terrible. So he just paints the whole house anyway. It's like, no, we didn't hire you to paint the sides and the back house. We just wanted the front of the house painted. So it's the same thing. Like in policing, our job is to maintain public order, right? Our job is to keep people safe. Our job, to prevent crime. Right. That doesn't mean we are given all of the authorities to do those things, right? We have to accept those limitations sometimes. We have to accept those constraints. It's like vinegar in our mouths, but we have to do it. It's like, hey, if the boss doesn't want us to use tear gas, I guess we're not using tear gas, boys. They're going to loot all the stores.
Yeah, right. And I think what you were saying is right, where we have to then say, okay, if this isn't working and we think this is a horrible idea, we have to then go to them and explain why, once again, why this is a horrible idea. We need that tear gas. We need that tool to be able to do this. Otherwise, we're going to be, we don't have any access, and this is going to happen. But you have to show the big picture to everybody. The same reason why you would say, we're changing to pink, and the guys are going to be like, why are we doing that? And you say, well, because of this, and this. And they're still not going to buy it until you say, look, and you come up with some ridiculously great reason. They're going to be like, oh, okay, I get that now. That's perfect. Let's go ahead and go with that. Whether it's everybody's going colorblind now and it doesn't even matter. And it's just cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then that why makes sense. But until you get them to buy on it, but it's hard when you have so many different, like let's say with the tear gas thing, you have so many different people who are already dead set against it. Sometimes your why is just not going to be bought, and you're going to have to live with the decision that gets made.
Well, so let's look at that. How can we avoid, those, A or B binary decisions with subordinates, right? So it's like, hey guys, we're going to go to pink uniforms from green. Mm-hmm. And then the guy's like, well, why? And now I have to answer the why. And then they point out a whole bunch of reasons why my why wasn't, didn't make sense. Yeah. So that's why, first of all, we don't make big changes all at once, right? Because there's probably things I didn't think of, or, let's be honest. I don't know everything my frontline guys do. I don't know how they do it all. I don't know what they do. Like, there's things that are invisible to me. Did you guys ever have in the States that commercial? It was a drunk driving commercial where it's like, the videos out of the windshield of the car. And as they're driving, a beer glass gets put down in front of the lens of the camera and it gets a little fuzzy. And then another beer glass gets put down, it gets even fuzzier. And then another beer glass and it's like super fuzzy. And then like the car crashes. Did you guys have that, or is that just a Canadian thing?
I think we had something similar to that, but I don't, not exactly like that, but something similar.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I had a boss who used to say, every promotion is like another beer glass, in front of you, where the world, what's actually happening on the road gets fuzzier and fuzzier. Right. Oh, yeah. So if I'm not a humble leader and I just assume I know what's best for the team, hey, pink uniforms are best. Like, it's going to lull the criminals into, they're going to be made peaceful by just, how great we look. Or, if I think I know that and I don't realize, or I say, hey guys, like, we're in a major urban city here. You don't need green. We're going to switch to blue. And I don't realize that, hey, well, 30% of our calls are actually on rural acreages, in the outlying areas, because I thought I knew, but I kind of lost sight of that.
Right.
If I just start with hey guys, we're doing A because I think A is more important than B, now I have to defend my position, right? I have to defend my decision. So if I can, I'm going to come to the team. I'm like, guys, I think we need to assess our uniform color. Is it the best color we can have? What are the relevant factors we need to think about here?
Right.
And then maybe they're going to list all sorts of answers, and it's going to be obvious that it's status quo, or they're going to self-discover that we should change colors. But if it's like really obvious that, oh no, this is the status quo, I didn't have to say we're going to pink and then change my mind.
Yeah.
That's one thing I always try to avoid, is painting myself in a corner where I have to change my mind.
Right.
It sucks. Like you just feel stupid. It's hard to do. You might not even do it. If you do it, you're going to be embarrassed, and you're going to spend a whole lot of leadership capital in doing it. Yeah. So how can I avoid, how can I avoid doing that? By collecting the information and perspectives on the front end.
Yeah. So what's your, I guess, your biggest why? Or why do you do what you do? Why do you maintain, being a police officer, being on SWAT, doing all this stuff? What keeps you moving and motivates you to continue trying to do more and do better?
When I started policing, the answer to that would have been, I just wanted to, drive my car fast with lights and sirens and fight bad guys. Uh-huh. Like, that's what I like. Literally, that was the fun part.
Batman. Yeah.
I want to be Batman. Exactly. Yeah. When I look at it now, I realize, like, hey, every impaired driver I took off the road, maybe I saved someone else's life that night. Mm-hmm. Right. That sex offender that's in jail right now for the rest of his life because, I drafted a search warrant that, was, and got and found his trash, his, treasure trove of child porn. And, I managed to talk the kid into giving the statement. He's in jail forever now. How many kids has he not molested because of me? Yeah. That old lady who had the drug house next to her house, who was just terrified, and we went and raided it. How much better of a sleep did she get that night compared to the night before?
Right.
Like, where are all those hidden benefits that wouldn't have happened, but for our team's efforts?
Right. Yeah.
So
that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool to think of it like that. You don't know how many busloads of nuns you've saved by getting drunk drivers or whatever the case may be.
And you'll never know. Mm-hmm. You'll never know. And it's a little unsatisfying. I wish I had a tally or something. Instead, I always kept track of my value in policing by keeping track of how many years of jail people I've arrested have gotten. And I figured if I could do a 1-for-1 ratio, like for every year of policing, someone goes to jail for a year, I've done pretty well.
Uh-huh. Yeah. That's kind of a way to look at it. Yeah.
But then if you do a guy for murder, you're like, you just put your feet up for the rest of your career.
Right. I've done my thing. And your boss is like, get out there, get back to work. Yeah. No, I had a guy, he was, he did a ride along, and he hadn't, he hadn't been hired yet, but he was looking at applying and stuff like that. And I said, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to be a police officer? He's like, I kind of want to help people. I said, no, let's look at that. You say you want to help people. You want to, drive fast. You want to carry a gun. That's all cool. Those are all great things. I said, but there's going to be a point when driving fast is okay. It is what it is. And you're going to get in trouble and, you get whatever, you might get in a crash. Carrying guns is cool. You like shoot guns. Yeah, we can do that at the range all day long too. So, and he goes, well, I want to help people. I said, okay, what happens when those people don't want to be helped? What happens when they're all jerks and they expect you to help them? What happens when this is the 800th time that you've tried to help them and they're not buying it? And what happens when that the people just frustrate you and anger you and you're just done with people? Because I don't care who you are, there's a point where you get done with people. You're tired of seeing kids molested. You're tired of seeing people murdered. You're tired of seeing big bad traffic crashes where somebody's clobbered because somebody was drinking. What happens when you get to that point and you're done seeing that stuff? And he goes, I hadn't even thought about that. I said, you've got to think about why. There's got to be a bigger reason. There's got to be a better reason why you do those things. And he said, okay. So he ultimately got hired by us, and he was, I've talked to him recently, and he says, I still tell that story to this day, because there was one day that I was like, hey, do you remember when I did a ride along and you said, what's your why? And I said, oh yeah. He goes, today's that day. I am done with this. I am so frustrated right now. And then he was telling me that just this last week, he was telling me, I use that story all the time, and I continue to remember, what is my why? Why do I want to do something? And it has to be more than, I want to do good. You got to have a solid reason why. You know what you're doing. Otherwise, when it gets difficult, you're going to forget it. The outside motivation doesn't mean anything. You have to have that internal fire that burns, that keeps you doing whatever it is you're doing.
So what was his why then? Was it ancillary why?
He's not telling me. He won't tell me.
Wow.
He won't tell me. He won't tell anybody. But he goes, I know what it is. I know what it is now. I have a feeling it has to do with his kiddos, and I think it has to do with, but I don't know. He won't say. And but I think it's cool that he won't say. That's his.
That's cool.
That's his why. And but everybody has their own. Everybody has their own, and some people are still looking for theirs, but they know they're doing what they're supposed to do in the meantime. So, yeah. So what's on the horizon for Kevin Cyr? What's his next step? Is he gonna be a boss of RCMP at some point?
Nope, I'll never promote. So it's kind of getting embarrassing. I've been an inspector, like lieutenant, for, is it 5 or 6 years now? I kind of lost track. 5 years, I think. I see the promotion list, and all the guys who've promoted before me or sorry, even after me, are starting to get further bumps. So it's kind of getting a little conspicuous. The boss, like, I've been rated as promotable on my promotion. Like, you get an assessment, and they're like, yeah, promotable and ready for advancement. And you have to fill out a form of what jobs you want to go to. Mm-hmm. Mine's blank, and
I like where I'm at, and this is where I want to stay.
Yeah, I like where I'm at, and I'm going to stay. So I only have to do, like, for my retirement, another 2 years, mm-hmm. 2.5 years, I guess, gets me to my 24 in a day, we call it. So my unreduced pension. Uh-huh. I'm engaged in a big project right now where we're rewriting our incident commander training. So the commanders who are commanding SWAT calls, they're not all ex-SWAT members, right? Mm-hmm. So some guy comes in, he might be an incident commander and he not have a whole lot of experience. So we're just rewriting it all. And it's a countrywide course, and not just RCMP. It's for actually most agencies in Canada to do this one course. So if you do a SWAT call in, like, York Regional in Ontario, they're not RCMP, they have the same training standard for command as we do. So it's pretty cool.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So we're rewriting that, and doing a deep dive right now on hostage rescue stuff. So I really want to understand, that big call that comes in, the ideologically motivated, 3 suspect hostage taking, where they're making, politically motivated demands. How are you going to deal with that?
Right. Yeah.
Like it's tough, right? And we look at, you look at like the Lint Cafe in Australia and some of the lessons learned through there, and there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Right. I mean, yeah, that could happen to anybody at any time. And so to have that knowledge is awesome. That's cool that you're doing that. That's really cool.
Yeah. So that's the next big thing. And then off into the sunset to do, I don't know what. That's a good question. I need to, I guess, figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah. You're going to go be a guest speaker at Jocko's Musters, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Hit him up.
So that's cool. Kevin, I've absolutely loved our conversation today, and I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. This is fantastic.
Cool. Okay. No, appreciate it. Always fun, man.
Yeah. How can people learn more about whatever it is you want to share with everybody? How can, if they say they had questions or they have an interest in, shoot, if I do have a couple Canadian listeners, if they say, I want to join RCMP, or I want to do what this guy does, how could they go about it?
Yeah, you hook me up on LinkedIn. It's Kevin Cyr, last name spelled Cyr. And I post there. I try for 1 or 2 things a week, usually just some problem I've had, or some something I've had to learn the hard way. I'll kind of put a few thoughts together, and I'll post that. So hit me up on LinkedIn. Yeah,
you've got some really pretty good articles. Actually, over the last couple of weeks, you've had some really good ones that have been. The one that I read at the beginning of this episode was one of your articles, and you have some really good ones on that. Really, they incite some thought process, so it's good.
Yeah, well, I used to write for academic journals, like in law journals and criminology journals. Mm-hmm. The review process has gotten so ideologically motivated that I just refuse to engage in academia anymore.
Yeah.
So now I write. I write for the NTOA magazine. So I've got 5 or 6 articles out with them, so you can find some stuff there. And then LinkedIn's super convenient, like 500 words, takes a couple hours to put together, and it gets pretty broad reach, so it's kind of fun. But it's
that's cool.
And I tell you, it forces you to clarify your thinking, right? Like, I'm not writing for anyone but myself. It's just, if you want to write about command presence, you have to understand command presence, and you have to solidify these sort of murky, nebulous thoughts that are just floating in the ether. You have to, grab them and pull them down and translate it. And then once you've put it out there, you have to start acting that way. Because if I write a thing about command presence, that
this guy's all talk.
Yeah. And then I just don't do it. I'm losing my temper at work. Like, wow, man, you can't be that way. So,
yeah. Hey, remember the thing you said? Know what I say? It was right here in this article you wrote.
That's right. Yeah. Exhibit A, boss.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's good. It holds you accountable, and it's solid. That's a good way to be. So I would encourage you, go on LinkedIn, look up Kevin Cyr. I'll have his name on. I'll put his name, and I'll put your LinkedIn profile on the advertisement I put for this episode, and it'll be on, all the general social medias that I have. So that'll be good. Be very cool.
Cool, man.
So, Kevin, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. It's been nothing but a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to, whenever you want to come back on at some point, you're more than welcome. You have something to talk about, we can chat it up. So,
sounds good, Ken. Appreciate it, man.
Cool. Hey, thanks a lot. We will talk to you after later.
And Kevin Cyr has left the building, so to speak. And, some of that stuff is it's fascinating to me. I know some people are like, oh, okay, you're talking about just budgetary. No, sometimes you have to think about the grander scheme of things, not just that thing itself, but the thought process around it, the why, the flanking, the how to deal with people. He was talking about leadership capital, all these different things that make up why and how you do things. It's not just deciding uniform colors. It is there's more to it. There's a why, and there's a reason, and then how you go about doing it. And it takes a real professional, a person that really pays attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it and how to treat people, to be able to do it right in order to get buy-in from those that they work with. Because nobody works alone. And if you do work alone, there's why are you doing that? We have a reason that we're here. And like I said all the time, it's for other people. And so you don't work alone. And you might have a job where you do a part of it alone, but nobody works alone. You've got to work with other people in one facet or another. So I think it's fascinating to talk about that. And Kevin is a consummate professional and knows a lot about that subject. So it was great to have him on here. If you are interested in anything more in regards to the podcast here, or you want to get involved with our conversation, you can find us on pretty much every social media platform, and that is Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Get a hold of us. Ask questions. Say something about the podcast, or if you have questions for each a guest, you can get a hold of me, and we can try to get you a hold of them and have those questions answered. But check them out too. And like I was saying with Kevin, he's got a ton of articles that he's written, and they're good. They're good articles. They really make a lot of sense, and they'll make you think a little bit too. And they'll just add a little bit of information and help you make a better person too, hopefully. So, but I will put all those contact information for Kevin on the social media advertisement, and you'll be able to get a hold of him, or you can get a hold of us. You can also find us at www. Does anybody say that anymore? I don't know. The What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com, and all of our prior episodes are on there. You can find us on there. There's also links to podcast platform of your choice, whether it's Stitcher or iTunes or Google or Alexa or whomever, and you can subscribe to the podcast from there, and then they'll let you know when every podcast episode, a new podcast episode is dropped, and you'll be able to download it. Hopefully you're downloading them. That helps us. That helps me know who's listening, and I can hopefully one day get some sponsors for this fine podcast of ours, and that would be great. So if you are so inclined, go ahead, subscribe. We appreciate it. And that just brings me to understanding the appreciation that we have for one another, the appreciation we have for the heroes in our lives, whether you're a nurse or a teacher, or you're a firefighter, an EMT, a veteran in the military, or you're a police officer. We could not have the world that we live in without those people. And even if you're not, but you support, knowing that you support everybody, all our heroes, is a fantastic thing to understand. And so I thank you for it. I thank you for each one of you that continues to do that job. That is difficult, because without you, who would do it? So I thank you so much. We appreciate you being who you are. And I want to thank Kevin Cyr for coming on. It was fantastic talking with you. And like he said, but for the grace of God, but go I. Any of this stuff could happen to anybody at any time. All the stuff that we talk about with all the guests on here could happen to anybody at any time. And I guess the comfort that we have knowing that there are people willing to step up and train and know how to deal with that stuff, think about that stuff ahead of time, is but for the grace of God, there are people that do that. So thank you. And thank you to our listeners for listening. You guys are great. So for Kevin Cyr, I have been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We're clear.